Good evening, everyone. Let's give God a hand clap of praise. I'd like to welcome you to Hebron Fellowship Baptist Church, where we are a people of purpose, prayer, and praise. My name is Darrell Vining. I'm the senior pastor. We are so excited to have as our guests tonight as our friends, our wonderful brothers and sisters in blue, Warner Robins Police Department. And we're going to be having a community forum. And we're looking forward to you asking questions. Every time you have a question, just walk up to the microphone and ask it. You don't have to touch the mic. The people in the back have the ability to make sure you're heard and that you are understood clearly. And I'm so pleased to be here. If you don't mind, let us bow our head for a word of prayer. Father, we thank you today for your grace and mercy. We thank you for this opportunity for us to fellowship one with another once again. Forgive us now of our sin. Bless us as we forgive those who sin against us. Bless this time as we share the concerns of our heart, that we share the ideals that will make our growing community grow bigger, better, bolder, and stronger for your honor and for your glory. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. I'd like to introduce Chief Fisher, who is the chief of the Warner Robins Police Department. Let's give God some praise for him. And he's going to introduce his staff that he has with him. And he's going to tell us how we're going to be going forward from here.
How we're doing, I wish to thank each and every one of you for being part of here and being part of our team. Because as a community, we are all as one, and we can't fight the problems of the city by ourselves. I'd like to thank my command staff that are here tonight with me. Sitting next here to my left, your right, is the Assistant Chief, Todd Edwards. To his left, again, further to your right, is the Uniformed Operations Major, Lee Van Usdahl. To my right, your left, is Lieutenant Neil Hill. He is with our Narcotics Investigations Unit. And to his right, again, to the far left, onto your side, is Lieutenant Justin Clark of our Criminal Investigations Section. The format that I'd like for us to go by is to have you come up and ask us the questions for us to respond back to it. And if we have a awkward moment, we have information that we can pass on and give a direction and try to stir some conversation points. But the focus of these town hall meetings is not for us to wait for a problem to have these conversations, but for us to have a conversation now. If you have some misconceptions or concerns about the police department, where we're going as a community, we're here to address those issues for you here. And we wish for a polite and open conversation across the board with everybody. And again, we thank you for being here tonight.
Let me take advantage of having the mic that I always have. And I want to ask you all, are there some new initiatives? I believe at the last city council meeting, there's a new initiative that's coming along about partnering with Willie Raines. If you'd like to tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, and thank you for opening that as a point of conversation up. Within the city of Warner Robins, we have been very blessed over the past 5 years to be able to show a continuing trend of crime reduction. But regardless, if you have one victim of a crime, it's one too many. One area that we have a serious concern about is with the youth violence, and as it's dealing with firearms in that manner in which the children don't understand, or the young adults, the significance of what happens when you discharge that firearm. We've had issues where children have messing around with a firearm have shot their friend by accident. We've had folks sitting there thinking just by shooting in a house that they would scare somebody, and it's resulted into a homicide, and they don't understand their consequences of actions. So what we've chose to do is we have been proactive and aggressive in trying to get guns off the street, and I'll provide those statistics in a little bit. But that is just a police department approach to a problem that needs a community solution. And on that point is we partner with the freight train, Pastor Willie Raines, on combat bullying and to get the guns off the street. And our focus is not in a sense of how it's sometimes spun as, the government trying to disarm the community. That is 100% not the case. We respect the Second Amendment rights of every citizen. But what we do know is we've had a significant number of firearms that have been stolen within the community, and these guns are making it into your homes. And while I need a search warrant to go into your home to do a search based out of probable cause. You as a parent or responsible homeowner, people in your house are your guest. And if you're seeing behavior patterns that become alarming to you and you think that maybe my child or somebody that I'm allowing to stay in the house is engaging themselves into these activities, and you have access to it being your house, and you observe or find a firearm that you know is not supposed to be in the house, it's not your firearm, there's a strong chance that it's probably a stolen firearm. But then you're faced with a conundrum. What do I do with it? Do I take this firearm and turn it into the police, and if it's stolen, they're going to look at me and question me about how I got the stolen gun? Or are you faced with a conundrum of, hey, it's my loved one, and I don't necessarily want to see them go to jail, but they shouldn't have this. Again, how do I resolve this dilemma I'm in? So the Warner Robins Police Department has partnered with Pastor Willie Raines, and as well as other partners within the community, and it's really a genesis project out of a tragedy. Traquavius Holloway, a young man, 14 years of age, back on the 3rd of February, lost his life because of another 13-year-old with a firearm, not realizing the significance of his actions, indiscriminately shot the firearm. And that family is carrying a heavy burden to this day, and they're here tonight with us. And again, my heart goes out to them because they've paid a price that I pray to God nobody here has to pay. So in that fashion, we are conducting Operation Lay It Down, and it's focused with, again, for responsible homeowners and guardians of a house, if you will, that find these weapons, and they know it's not a household weapon, that they have an avenue to go ahead and free their house of that weapon in itself. And that's going to be on November 16th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Perkins Field, which, if you're familiar with it, it will be to the west side of the old Warner Robins Rec Department where we hold the food truck roundups. And we will be in position to receive any weapon that you might wish or find that needs to be turned in to be able to turn it in. It will be anonymous. We're not going to take your pictures. We're not going to take your name. The focus is to provide an avenue or location point for responsible parents and household members to go ahead and free themselves of something that is a concern. And hopefully, if we save but one life, it will be a success. And again, thank you for opening that up.
Am I on? Okay. I just had a question, being the new chief and everything. And over the last several years, Warner Robins Police Department has said that they are looking to hire more and more officers. And I know at one time they said there was a deficit of officers and they were going through more hiring efforts. My question is, with the city of Warner Robins growing even more, has the number of authorizations increased for the number of officers in Warner Robins? And are we close to filling a number? Are you at your authorization now, or are you still in the process of hiring more officers? And what are you going to do as far as retaining officers? I think that was an issue that's come up in the past, is retaining the officers once they get here at Warner Robins.
Sir, I wish to thank you for raising that question. I'll address it as what have we done to work first on the retention of the officers, because we've had a, if you will, a loss and attrition rate of officers that has been unprecedented, really going since 2014 to present. When COVID hit, there was the great employee walkout, if you will, and then trying to get people back into the work environment. And on top of that, the work environment's changed. When we operated underneath COVID, there were a lot of accommodations made, and we're trying to get people back into the normal mainstream thought of the work process. So we have worked on a cultural shift within the department, building it from a viewpoint of family. We are a team. One person is no more important than the other. And we have broke down the whole construct of silos within an organization. Through that, in the partnership and giving a voice to the employees, I can tell you we have only had 3 employees leave the department since October 22, and that was following family issues. It had nothing to do with the department, and one ended up going with the Department of Corrections, which was for an investigations position. So it was a job opportunity for them specifically. Now, we have lost employees that were discipline issues, and that just needed to happen. But as far as people leaving the department, we created a cultural shift within the department and empowerment and investment into our employees. On the hiring, the city had went very much in a positive direction for all the employees on pay raises, and that has helped substantially with the recruitment side of things as well. But as well, we have a vision within the police department, and it's communicating that vision within the community, other agencies, and those that are coming out looking for a job within law enforcement, and they're trying to determine, is this the place that they want to be? So when, I'm going to throw some numbers at you. When we go back to 2022, the police department was authorized to have 134 officers. We had 98 officers. When I refer to this is sworn police officers that have full peace officer certification. So we had a shortage of 36 officers. On average, they were answering 73,680 calls that year. When we came into 2023, again, we had 134 officers authorized. And we hit a degradation of 44 officers. We were down to 90 officers on the road. And in part, we were still dealing with coming out through the COVID situation and societal matters. And I'm going to be honest, we had a cultural issue within the department where the officers didn't feel that they were invested in and that they had a stake within the department for growth. In October of 22 was when I came in as the interim chief when we started working on the cultural shift within the organization. And what I can answer for you now is we've restructured the department. Through that, we had a reduction from 134 in authorized strength to 133. Where we lost that one body was at the command staff level position, where we felt that we could readjust it out, but there was no impact to the number of officers to the road. Through that, we are now at 113 officers on the road, which means as far as the agency, we're at a 20 officer shortage. When I present these numbers to you, in 2022, we were 30 patrolmen, what you would see answering the calls. We were 30 short. Currently, we're at 15 short, and we're on board and on a consistent, regular basis. We're recruiting officers that are coming in through other areas. We're going to be interviewing one tomorrow that's coming in from the Savannah area. So the reach of where we're at for the police department on a recruitment is pretty wide, and we're doing well in building the strength up. And in doing that, it's allowed us to go ahead and fill in other positions for more proactive police and traffic enforcement within the community. But I hope I answered your question, sir.
Hi, my name is Alex Vining, and we all know that police brutality is a major issue in our nation, and even though we haven't really had any incidents of that, I was wondering what training or type of learning y'all do to help combat unconscious and conscious bias that tends to end in tragedy when police officers pull over or arrest Black citizens.
Thank you for your question, ma'am. And I think your question actually needs to have the scope opened up beyond just within the Black community, but all communities, because we are a multicultural community. We're an international city. So what are we doing in law enforcement? The governor's office has initiated initiative training, and at one point is bias-based policing and community policing and de-escalation techniques that are mandated through that. Within the Warner Robins Police Department, we have a policy directed focus solely on bias-based policing. That's been in effect probably about 10 years now, pretty close to. What else are we doing to try to reduce issues of injury and violence as to what you're saying? Again, the Warner Robins Police Department has partnered with a vendor in this town, Miller Martial Arts, for more defensive tactics training. And what to be maybe 3 hours that was done a year in training has been expanded upon to where we're doing it, and we need to do more, but we're doing 8 hours a year onto that. Part of our new training center that we have for a plan for that build out is also with the training area to focus on to the defensive tactics, where we're using more controlled techniques and takedowns to minimize those matters which you're talking about. What I can tell you is I've pulled the data from the previous years, and since we started this program, there's been a reduction in the reports of injury to both the people that were taken into custody and to the officers. But the most significant thing that we can say from a societal standpoint, what we can do to reduce crime is, or those injuries and those encounter points, is this. If a police officer has contact with you and he explains to you that you're under arrest or there's an action point where that's taking place, they have probable cause for it. Now, that's not to sit there and say that there could be an issue that could be challenged. I'm not going to say that could never happen. But what I am going to say is if the officer, based off of facts that they know at that time that they have probable cause to make an arrest, they have the legal authority to make that arrest. Just by the mere presence of putting a hand on somebody, if you're just shaking somebody's hand, could be construed by somebody as a point of action of violence towards them. But what I can promise you, though, is if you resist an action, it's going to be met with more action, because in that officer's position, he is going to make that arrest. He's not going to allow that person just to walk off, and the more violence that person presents to them is just going to escalate that situation. So again, we need to be civil as we deal and approach with each other and engage. But again, if an officer explains to you that you're under arrest and he starts to effect the arrest, any force you offer against that officer will be met equally so they can complete that task of making the arrest. So one way to solve an excessive use of force aspect is, again, for compliance and civility amongst all parties involved. Thank you for that question.
How you doing, Chief? I am a transplant in this area in Georgia through the military. Got here around the 2000s. And I had a question along with a thought. In Georgia, do they still have the PAL, the Police Athletic League? Have y'all even heard of it?
We've heard the Police Athletic League. I've been with the Warner Robins for 22 years. I've been in Macon, almost 9 years prior to that. I've not been engaged with the Police Athletic League, but what we are doing as a department for engagement with the youth in the community is we do have the Public Safety Cadet Program, and we do engage with the Warner Robins Park and Rec Department.
The reason why I asked that question, you knew, but the rest of them, they looked. I don't know if y'all never heard of it or not. 50 plus years ago when I grew up in New Jersey, we didn't have really big brothers, big sisters, but what we did have was the Police Athletic League. They had boxing, basketball, swimming. We had the YMCA, the YWCA, and the Boy Scouts. All of those departments were all interrelated, that we had contact. When we saw the police, it wasn't the uniform or the authority or the things that I see you have now in the culture. It was just, there goes the chief. He's got a question for you. And if you did something, word got home way faster than whatever you did. We didn't have these problems that was going on because we were a community and they were all intertwined, and the basis of it was the church. The pastors, we were all locked in. So now when I got here, the first thing I looked for was the YMCA, and the YMCA was on Moody Road, and it closed right after that. So now you're taking these same kids, what do they do all day long? Like they used to go to Seward Circle, one of these basketball parks, and disconnect. So I was wondering down here, did they ever have the PAL? Because the cadet programs and all that stuff was in PAL, every bit of it. And everybody was a part of it. At my age, I'm 57, I've never seen, so much focus on the police, because the people that's police are part of the culture, the younger ones in there. And people don't realize when you got to arrest somebody for doing something, y'all got to go hardcore. That's when you got to take the chains off. And I don't see the programs and the organizations. A lot of churches have youth ministries and they have youth programs and all that stuff, but I don't see enough before it gets to you. When I grew up, we had avenues. We learned how to swim at the Y. We did everything in those organizations that used to exist that's not there anymore. They even had the mental facility. It was on the top floor of the Y. We couldn't go up there. It was crazy. It was. But I applaud your effort. And I just wondered, in Georgia, did they have a PAL down here? Because that's one of the things that I see that's missing.
So I want to thank you for your question and your point that you're making about what is the police department on the community engagement as a whole. Yeah, and what I can tell you since, again, coming into the position which I found myself in October 22 and the present, we focused heavily into re-engaging into the community. I believe if we're not in the community engaging with the children now, then you're taking options away from them and their perspective, and we're allowing a perception to become their reality based out of that absence of presence. So I agree with you into that. But it's also got to be a balance of what we have with resources of the numbers of officers on the road. We talked about that a minute ago, and into the scheduling. What I can tell you from a community initiatives within the Warner Robins Police Department, we have Citizens Police Academy, we have Women's Defensive Tactics, we have men's and women's firearms classes. We're involved with the Law Enforcement Torch Run for the Special Olympics, the children in need. We're hosting these town hall meetings. We've initiated the Public Safety Cadet Program. We have a student intern programs. We have Identikid. We participate with the Warner Robins Park and Rec Department with their youth programs, such as Family Fun Nights. We do trunk or treat. We do special speaking and demonstrations within the K-9 unit and other specialty units within the community. We have an Officer Arno Children's Program. We have future programs for outreach in the Latino and Spanish-speaking community because that's an area which we need to do further outreach in due to the language barriers. We also have partnerships with faith-based communities and guest speaking engagements such as what we have here today. We do civic speakings with the Civitans Club, Optimist Club, and Lions Clubs. We support local chapters of the Boy Scouts. We support local Young Marine programs. We do community impact questionnaires, and on the back door on your approach in, you have a QR code, and on the case cards that the officers hand out, there's also a QR code to it, and on our departmental webpage, there's a QR code which has a community impact questionnaire, which allows the community to have impact, and their responses come directly to myself and the administrative assistant for a more detailed response back. It's kind of our report card back to us and within the community, within other departments as well. We do Touch a Truck, Night of the Blue Lights, Shop with a Cop, and similar theme-based programs, as well, again, as what I stated with the interns. So we have a lot of programs, and we do partner with other civic groups, such as the 100 Black Men of the Middle of Georgia, and Warner Robins just recently chartered, was a year ago, about. It's a very substantial program for engagement within the community, teaching options, and again, working with Pastor Willie Raines on the combat bullying. So do we have a specific person that's tasked to it? We have one person that is tasked with our community initiatives within the department, specifically as a day in and day out operational tasking for him. But part of our evaluation process that we've established out now is that's an evaluatable field for the officer's evaluation. And they're mandated to have X number of community engagement activities within the year as well. So we've restructured our evaluation programs, and that being one of the critical areas of which that we have, again, to go ahead and make sure that we are engaging with the community to shape a new perspective in relationship within the community.
My name is Jeff Holden. I live in Spring Hills on Wind Place. Chief, you're aware of my concern, and it's to do with overwhelming traffic and speeding traffic on our street as a result of them putting in a 400-unit apartment complex at the end of our dead-end street. But I just want to say, Chief, I thank you for addressing that issue with me personally twice, once this evening and once following the last council meeting. I just want to say I appreciate your intellect and your depth of knowledge surrounding all aspects of addressing a situation like that, well beyond the perspective of just police department. I wanted to thank you all for your service. I'm thankful that I live in a city when you see all this stuff happening in the big cities, all around, and even as close as Atlanta, of the disrespect and the lack of acknowledgement of what you all do and what you face every day. I'm glad I live in a city that backs the blue. So
I want to say thank you very much, and I wish I could sit there and say that I was the one that had a lot of the suggestion points and answers, but the assistant chief is our traffic expert within the department through many years into that. And he's the one that does the JMR studies. And they did the one back in August. And when we spoke about 2 months ago at City Council, again, we implemented another JMR study, which got us this most recent data to which we were talking about tonight. In looking at it, okay. The question was dealing with Wind Place and the traffic issues that are out there as it's dealing with that. And we just can't put speed bumps into neighborhoods. We can't just do rumble strips. DOT has certain parameter points, and speed within a given community on a public road dictates a lot of that. If you go into a private residential neighborhood, that might be gated. Those are private streets. They can set a speed limit how they wish to, and speed bumps, and that coordinates to that. But even at that, there's application that comes in from a fire response that controls, again, what could be done for a traffic calming aspect. So again, through the conversations and looking at these studies, we know something has to be done to reduce that speed issue and to calm that situation down. And again, through talking with the city administrator onto it and building a further team out within the department and as a city as a whole, because the solution's not going to sit solely with the police department. There is going to be an engineering component that's got to come into it. And as a city, what I can tell you you're very blessed about is we don't try to resolve the problem necessarily just within one department. When we realize that we're challenged and limited into where we can go at it, we just don't say we did enough and walk away. We'll engage with other departmental directors and city leadership to work to get an answer and a solution to your problem. So again, I wish to thank you for keeping us abreast of the current problem, and I'm hoping we can get to a positive conclusion point for you on that.
Good afternoon, you guys. My name is Kim Madison. I reside in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm from Warner Robins, Georgia. On August the 25th, me and my daughter, Asteria Gary, came down for a beautiful birthday celebration. I'm sure you probably remember that, recall August the 25th when someone drove by and opened fire in a public just right down the street. And I asked myself, my daughter's a victim. She's still in the hospital. She's paralyzed. She came down here and she haven't went home the same. She stayed in the Macon Hospital for 2 weeks and a half. She got accepted to the Shepherd Center. I just left her today when I went there for lunch and had lunch with her. And I told her I was going to come down here. And I asked my friends, I said, what is going on in Warner Robins, Georgia, that people can just drive by, have the boldness to just drive down the street and open fire on 20 people, kids, mothers, daughters. I talked to a detective, is Detective Brandon Underwood, because, I was back and forth I stayed here the whole 2 weeks she was here until she got accepted. Got her to Atlanta. Vicki Chester, that's my best friend, her granddaughter was also a victim. Carlos Johnson it was 4 victims that night. It could have been fatalities. I thank God that he saved my daughter. But she's a bright young lady. I moved to Atlanta in 1995. She went to school there. She went to Georgia State. She owns her own home. She likes hiking. Her smile lights up a room. My heart is so hurt right now because I never thought, I live in a city where crime is every day. I never thought I could come home and this happened to my daughter. And along with my friends and family, I don't know. Do they have cameras? I asked questions. Do you guys have cameras? They say they have them on Watson Boulevard. I know Warner Robins has grown and it's beautiful. And then, just talking, they say they have gangs here. Do y'all have a gang unit here? Have it got that bad? Do y'all have gang units? I want to know, do y'all have gang units? Are y'all placing cameras in the right areas? I know Pleasant Hill keep a lot of traffic coming from Watson, going to Russell on Booth Road. Booth Road, yeah, I think I still remember that. But I'm also a descendant of Pearl Jackson Stevens. She's my great-grandmother, so contacted the mayor. My bless my cousin Warren Darrenly. He called me. He said that he was reaching out to, to see, But what hurts me the most, the suspect is still there. He's still, we haven't, he's still, the case is open. So I haven't heard anything from a detective or anyone. My daughter hasn't heard anything. Just ask her questions. Maybe she's seen something, but she said she didn't. Bless her heart. But I just want to know. I need information. This has been almost 3 months. She was supposed to be discharged on the 21st. Just found out Monday they got to extend it. So I'm still going through this training, trying to get her, so I can get her for a one-day pass to get home for Thanksgiving. We thought we was gonna have her home for Thanksgiving. She's got to come live with me. I got to be a caregiver. It has truly hurt my family. I drove from Atlanta today because I wanted to come down here and just see where you guys at as far as, because someone that bold enough to ride down the street is serious on innocent people. These are innocent people, had nothing to do with whatever is going on. So that's my question. Cameras, and do you guys have a gang unit? Okay, thanks.
So to answer your question, if you had one gang member, you have too many gang members. Do we have a gang issue? I'm not going to lie to you. Yes, we do. Is it the same problem as other municipalities? Fortunately, we're not like municipalities that are farther north than us in that point. But yes, we do have an issue with it. The Warner Robins Police Department has identified that. We are working with the Georgia Bureau of Investigations. They have a Middle Georgia Gang Task Force that we are a member of, and we have an officer that's specifically assigned to that unit and has the full arrest powers and investigative authority as the Georgia Bureau of Investigations. So there's a proactive point that we've taken in that regard to also network in within the Middle Georgia area to provide those resources to us as well. Cameras. Do we have cameras? We do. But cameras aren't going to be the answer for everything in every location. It's an unrealistic thought to think that we would have a camera in every location for every point in time. The City of Warner Robins has partnered up through and our 5 parks that have the most amount of activity currently, where people will tend to gather and gravitate to unannounced gatherings, such as where we have shootings and other issues. We have a $790,000 project onto those 5 parks on cameras that will feed into what we're designing and building out for a real-time crime center. Now, you want to ask, how serious do we take this issue with that? The Real-Time Crime Center is a $256,000 project that's coming out of our department that we're using state condemned funds for to go ahead and get that moved forward into addressing some of these issues on the embracement of technology to try to get further tools, if you will, in place for investigations onto these matters. But it takes time. We're also battling a cultural issue. And when I come into some of these things, what I'm going to tell you what we're faced with is, again, we are a pro-Second Amendment agency. We believe in that. But when I start producing firearm statistics, because your crimes that you're talking about are dealing with indiscriminate gunfire, what I can tell you is these criminals that are doing this are not doing it with their personal guns. They're doing it with stolen guns. So the Warner Robins Police Department in 2024 to date has taken in 173 firearms into our property section. Of that, we have had, since January 1st to October 31st, 135 guns reported as stolen from automobiles. From that, during that same time period, we have had 120 entering autos where guns were stolen. So you can see at least several of these incidents, there were more than one firearm in that vehicle. Out of that, though, 111 of the 120. Sit there and think about this number I'm going to put out to you. 120 cars were broke into where firearms were stolen. Of that, only 9 of them were the cars locked. So in part, we are, as a society, a cultural standpoint, being irresponsible in how we're safeguarding our property, for one. And these kids are just popping doors, seeing what's unlocked, and they're getting in. And now we have 135 guns that are out on the street. We've taken 173 of them in. But we've had in the city of Warner Robins to date, between burglaries and entering autos, 212 firearms that are stolen that are out on the street. And our officers are proactively out there day in and day out, making their traffic stops, in doing what they can to get these guns off the street. And then in part, man, we partner in again, like I said, with Operation Lay It Down. Because of such tragedies, what you're talking about, because it takes a family component, the community, to get engaged with us onto this. Because if I do not have probable cause to get a search warrant, I just cannot go into your house and do a search. But these children are going on Facebook, doing Instagram, TikTok, you name it, displaying these firearms. And guess what? Those kids have parents or other people that are on their TikTok page, Facebook page, that know somebody's parents. So it's really hard for us to believe that in a lot of these household situations where it's an unknown. What are we doing? We're doing what we can to be proactive into addressing these matters and engaging with the technologies into it. But we need you as a community to understand our question comes back into where we have these children or young adults that are somewhat problematic. As the head of households, what are you doing to address those issues? Because that's a cultural issue that's established and coming out from the home, where through their social media engagements, what they're watching from videos, movies, music, they're emulating a lot of that. They believe that's the right way. Where's somebody in the house trying to communicate to them that's not the right way? And this isn't being hard or judgmental onto heads of household. What it's saying is the police department can't address this issue alone. It's going to take the community to be tired of what they're being faced with and take personal accountability at home trying to take those steps. Because if you have a bad actor in a household, as soon as that bad actor goes out of the household and you ignore it, that bad actor is now going to partner up with another bad actor out onto the street. And the next thing you know, we have such as what you said, ma'am, where they're driving by with a complete indiscretion or care about anybody else because they have no respect for their own being. So if they don't have respect for their own being, we can't expect them to have a sense of empathy or respect for anybody else. So we as a society culturally have to work on that shift point, and we got to do it together. It can't be one-sided.
Ma'am, I'm Justin Clark. I'm the lieutenant of the Criminal Investigations Division. If you'll just hang out for a few minutes afterwards, I'll be happy to get with you and talk to you about your daughter's case. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your sacrifices and your commitment to our community, and your families too. My question is, it's a mental health question. We know, I work as a mental health clinician in community, and we know there's a vicious cycle between incarceration, homelessness, and hospitalization. And I know a lot of times you guys get some of the same calls, maybe frequent flyers. You see them over and over. And sometimes, these calls can maybe escalate from a mental health situation to a much more severe situation. It didn't have to. From your all point of view, I'd like to know, walk me through what you all see on these calls and what role you guys play in mitigating the vicious cycle in our community. Thank you.
I'm going to allow the Uniformed Operations Commander to answer that because that really comes into his folks are dealing with that on a day in and day out basis, and he can paint a clearer picture to you what they're currently trending with.
Thank you. Can you hear me? We do deal with mental health challenges on almost a daily basis. And Georgia law is very specific about what our role is in that kind of thing. A police officer cannot compel somebody to seek mental health treatment on our own unless we have a valid reason to make an arrest. Now, what we can do is contact mental health professionals, because we've got the Georgia Crisis Line, we've got Middle Flint out there off 96. We can use their resources and try to get a mental health professional involved, and they can actually, if they've got the personnel, because they're even shorter staffed than we are often, to be totally honest with you, they can come out and interview the individual and sign what we call a 1013 form, which is basically involuntary committal. Now, if the person's willing to go seek mental health assistance or an evaluation, we can take them to the hospital and then they can seek treatment just like any other person that has any other illness. But if we have to go that route where we have to get the 1013 paperwork, we'll consult with the mental health professionals like Middle Flint or the crisis line. And then once that paperwork is signed, we are legally authorized to take that person and have them evaluated mentally. The challenge that we have, and as far as our role in those situations, because they often can escalate. When somebody's having a mental health crisis, they're not making good decisions. They may not even be seeing the world the same way you and I are. They'll see us or other folks as threats. They may be overly paranoid. And we have to try to find a way to resolve that without violence, but without anyone else or ourselves getting hurt. Sometimes, to be honest with you, if the person is not a threat to themselves or others, our best approach sometimes is to remove ourselves from the situation, which we've had to train ourselves and our newer officers to do that, because we're taught to be the ones that are supposed to find the solution. And a lot of times we're not the solution. And we've had to look at ourselves and say, maybe we don't need to be here, and allow someone else to handle the situation. Sometimes it's just the person needs some time or needs to deal with their family. So we are far more likely to step away from the situation. If we don't have a reason to compel that person to get mental health assistance, we will walk away from it unless we've got legal reasons why we cannot do that. One of the challenges that the entire community faces is once we take these folks for the mental health evaluation and say that the doctor or the psychologist or whoever interviews them determines that they do need to be housed or admitted for further treatment, we have an extremely limited amount of beds and places for these folks to go in this town. Because unfortunately, I'm sure anybody that's lived here any period of time like I have, you've seen our homeless population increase. And a lot of these individuals are suffering from some kind of mental health challenge. And a lot of them don't want help anymore because they've been in and out of that system so much that they don't want anything to do with it anymore. So there's a community solution, kind of a holistic approach that we need to take. We're there to try to make sure nobody gets hurt, the person having the mental health crisis, and other people around them, because sometimes these folks will hurt others. And we're also there to try to get them the help that they need. The challenge we have is there's not enough mental health professionals to go around. They are tapped out. And even when it's time for this person to get a bed and get some long-term treatment, a lot of times those facilities don't exist. So as a community, as a state, maybe even as a country, we've got to do better at trying to find some way to get help for these folks. Because otherwise it does create that revolving door that we don't like to be a part of any more than anyone else. But sometimes we can even take them to the ER or take them to Middle Flint and they'll get evaluated and there's no place for them to go. So that's kind of our role. I hope it kind of answers your question. A lot of the de-escalation training that the chief was talking about that we're required to do yearly, there's a lot of stuff on there on how to deal with mental health now. Because we didn't know back in the day. Depending on how somebody was acting, we would take the behavior maybe as threatening, and maybe our response was not the best response. We have been taught to start looking at this stuff in a different light and have been really successful in resolving these without causing harm as much as we possibly can.
Hello? All right. I'm kind of loud, so just traffic background. All right. I wanted to follow up on that because you were asking about processes and how we walk you through it. So one of the things that I had been challenged with a little while ago was the homelessness. Okay, when Robin started seeing, an influx of homelessness, people on the street, people doing this, we enacted some statutory things through code about the soliciting in the intersections, and keeping that down and addressing it. But going to the root of the problem, the city, we moved toward, what's the cause of this? So we started, meeting with the people that were homeless. We're trying to find out what their circumstances was. So our approach is first we make contact, we identify, right? And then we basically evaluate their situation. And then we educate because we are enforcement officers, and that's what we do. we enforced the law. So we had a lot of these individuals, for whatever reason, violating other people's rights by taking over their property, destroying it, and creating hazards. Some drug paraphernalia was washing into our water flow systems that wind up near the parks at Dry Lake Park. And then just refuse, other type of stuff as far as health department code with, biological, biohazard stuff, being places it didn't need to be with no restrooms and things of that nature. So once we identified these things, the city started addressing it. There's a gentleman, Brian Wise, that was with code enforcement, kind of headed that up, and he became our liaison. So he's the city's liaison now. So I will throw that out. If you have anyone that's in a situation, please contact Brian Wise at the city of Warner Robins, and we use him as a referral. So once we would go out, we would make contact and evaluate and educate about the law, that you can't use homelessness as a guise for lawlessness. Does that make sense? So you can't just come out here because you are in a situation of homelessness and just start being, violating the law everywhere. We can't have that. So we would educate, and then we would refer. We would refer to Brian Wise, and he would have contacts with the community-based outreaches that we're helping right now, until such time as the city of Warner Robins has invested in a homeless shelter that is not a sustainment program. It is an uplift program where they bring you in and they help you get back on your feet and they help you turn your things around so that you can hopefully move forward. What we found a lot of times is some people just don't want that. They just deny it. They deny it. They don't want it. They nope. And then we kind of are at an impasse at that point. So then we have to go to enforcement. So another program we developed was a private property enforcement initiative. And what that does is you can, as a private property owner, if it's a business or any place else, you can sign up with us and give us permission to enforce all laws and any laws. Some people think that we can just enforce that everywhere, and we can't. Private property has a little bit of different criteria sometimes than the streets and other places. So we've partnered up with that, and then that allows us to come in and make sure that someone's not creating lawlessness on private property. Does that help you with that process? And like I said, we're moving forward with that. I know that the city shelter is moving forward in the progress there and that program. So we will continue with our multifaceted approach and continue with the way we're doing things right now. Thank you.
Question along those lines, but it's not to the mental health procedures. How long have you all been in law enforcement? Longest tenure? 30 years? 25? So longer than that? 40 years?
I've been over 30. I know the chief and assistant chief for 30, over 30 years.
The reason I ask that question, it leads to the second thing I'm about to say and ask. Because in that time frame, in your time as a professional peace officer, you came into in a time where about 25, 30 years ago, here in our state and also across the country, we saw a reduction in agencies that deal directly with people who have mental health issues and challenges. And so now you've been trained completely up in a scenario where you have not had that resource to be able to work with. What can you do as an agency to, as we used to say in corporate America, manage up the line to get some resources to bring back maybe some of, because now once we've learned that if we don't have these facilities, well, they're on the streets. And if they're on the streets, you all are not going to be equipped to deal with that. We get that. Even if you get all the training and have to remember all of the codes that you're supposed to, you still can't deal with that. So what can you do as an agency to manage up the line to maybe bring better health care, mental health care perspectives to assist and partner with law enforcement?
What we do in Warner Robins and the law enforcement community as a whole, the way the state's broke up in the developmental disability behavioral health districts, we're partnered with Middle Flint as our provider. They're responsible for the Middle Georgia District area. So what do we do to help work up and down the line is first and foremost, I'm going to touch back to what I said from the beginning. We can't solve these problems by ourselves. It's got to be a joint effort with everybody being partners into it and not pointing a finger at somebody else saying it's your problem, your problem. It's how can I fit in to be a solution to the problem? So working with Middle Flint Behavioral Health, who's responsible for 11 counties, we happen to sit in the North County area, and they only had, they're broken into 2 district points, and we know what their rotations are for their crisis response team. It's not a co-responder team, it's a crisis response team. But they work separate from the crisis line that you're familiar with for the state with a 988. So if we have an issue and we can't get the state to have a prompt response, we do have access points through Middle Flint through our contact with them. But they too were faced with a challenge. They said, you know, when we do a 1013, we don't feel comfortable doing a transport. And they were challenged with that. Well, we said, well, that's real simple. When our vehicles hit a certain point of mileage, we've got to auction them off. Well, the city of Warner Robins donated several vehicles over to Middle Flint. So working with partnership with them, so when they do have a committal order of somebody that's not necessarily violent at that time, they're now in a position to where they can do a transport, not necessarily taken from the law enforcement resources that are available out on the street as well. So it's with our communication and partnership with our providers that are in the area and other outreach points to work with. They, though, are restricted by what you have for funding coming through, and that's with a lot of your private providers as well. Back in 1994, when I was in the city of Macon, I want to say it was in 1996 or thereabout, they completely shut down Milledgeville as far as a receiving facility point. So for us in the middle of Georgia area, that if you haven't been here prior to that, that's a point that we've been dealing with since around 1996. And again, having to work into these partnerships to resolve these problems out. So it is unique. By virtue, our job is in our name. We are law enforcement. And I appreciate you bringing that to an acknowledgement point of, you know, we're being drawn out of what's typically our normal wheelhouse, but it's been a good thing for us getting educated, as what the major stated, because again, we now know more of the behavior components of what not to do that we didn't know before was a trigger in action, let's say. So there's been benefits on the education point across the board. But again, like you stated, and realistically we know it's an issue that's going to take, again, from the societal standpoint, looking at solutions and trying to increase care facilities and look at from a legislative point while being respected to civil rights of the individuals that are in crisis on getting to a workable solution point.
Good evening, everybody. I had a curious question, and I don't know if you would be able to answer this, but what is the protocol for, so you said you do a 1013, and I'm familiar with GCAL and Middle Flint. If the person doesn't want to go, what is that protocol for you guys? And do you receive training on that?
So again, we're law enforcement. I'm not defaulting away, but once we have an order as a 1013, it's an order. The state doesn't give me any latitude about it. We have to serve and execute that order, and we want to do it in the least traumatic fashion possible. It does allow for us at points, if the family member wants to facilitate that transport, that we utilize the family to facilitate that transport. But we'll always use the least amount of force, if you will, to engage and get in compliance from the person to go for the treatment. But once we have a 1013 sign and we have contact, we are legally bound. We cannot just walk away from that. That's a statutorial point. And again, we try to exercise all our tools through communication and dialogue to gain trust and confidence of that person to facilitate that transport. That's about all we can do with that. You know, I know sometimes people would say, well, I'd rather you just walk away. We can't. And had we walked away and that person were to do something, harm themselves or someone else, there's still that obligation that's owed to society in that regard.
Okay, so I just want to piggyback off of I'm sorry for your loss and what the young lady said here. On October 4th, my son got in a physical altercation. They fought. I thought it was over. October the 11th, a week later, my 8-year-old now was in bed asleep. 1:30 in the morning, AK-47s, 9s, shot up my house while we were all in the bed. All the bullets went through his room. He's 9. 10 shots. I can't even tell you how many more on the other side. I sent my son away. I haven't seen my son since it happened because I'm scared for him. If you had the gall and the disrespect to come to a home and shoot in a home, how do I feel safe with my son being here? My 8-year-old is in therapy. He's scared to shower by himself. He's scared to sleep by himself. He's scared for me to leave him. He's actually scooting down the seats now just so he can see me. Oh, there you go. So I don't think people understand the trauma that our children go through when they have to experience something like this so long. They're not looking at how it affects them as they become adults. Will he become a person that is angry all the time? Will he feel that someone is always out to get him? How will this affect him in the long haul? I contacted the detective that was working on my case. She's been busy. She's had a few homicides, I think. And it kind of got pushed to the back. I just want to get to a place where I don't feel that I have to look over my shoulder. I want to get to a place where my son can come back home. I'm actually relocating now just because I know that these persons have ridden by my home because they posted it on social media, and they feel that my son is hiding. But as a parent, if you feel he's hiding, then he's hiding because as my job is to keep him safe. So I don't care what you think about that. I contacted the detective, gave her names, gave her pictures, gave her all of this information, and we're still in the same spot. So what can be done? What other resources do you guys need? Are you backlogged? Are you short-staffed? Like, what can we do? Because I done got to a place where I don't have money to be moving all over town trying to be safe. Like, this is just crazy. And I don't want it to be one of those situations where it's normally like, oh, well, your child was hanging with the wrong person, or you have guns in your home. I have one gun in my home. My son is scared to open a can of biscuits, just like me. So I know he's not the person that's carrying guns around. As you said, parents are aware of who their children hang with. They are aware of what's in their home. And if they're not, then they're an absent parent that is worried more about themselves than their home collectively. I check on everything. My son can't go to anyone's home unless I know their parents. I know who he hangs with. I know what it's all about. But a simple fist fight should not have led to someone intentionally trying to kill my son and in return could have killed my 8-year-old or myself. So please give me some advice, any updates on my case or what we can do. That's all I got.
Hey, yes, ma'am. Again, I'm Lieutenant Clark over the Criminal Investigation Division. If you would like, again, same thing with the miss over there. Afterwards, if you'll hang around, I'll get with you, get you my card, make sure you have my number. And then what I can do is tomorrow review the case that you have and read it all over, see what we have, and set up a meeting where we can discuss it and see where to go from there. Okay? Thank you.
Again, part of your situation you're dealing with is we as a society have glamorized violence. We've glamorized the criminal lifestyle. I mean, you can go back to the 20s, we were talking about, the Chicago typewriters going off. And when I say this, I'm not saying it in a condescending manner or a harsh manner to anybody out here. We as a collective have to take responsibility and work on our children, what they're engaging with within the social media realm as well. When these young children are growing up, we're putting cell phones in their hands at the age of 2 and 3 so they entertain themselves. And then we're also challenged with the fact of what you're dealing with. And I tell most parents, on any given day, you really have about 4 hours of time to have influential impact with your child when you factor in your work schedule, their school schedule. And again, what I'm going to come back and say, you have to make those 4 hours the most impactful times that you can to establish a code of conduct, if you will, about how you want them to grow up, what's right, what's wrong. And even with all that, the best you're going to do, you still have to accept that your children are being immersed with 20 hours of society on the backside. So it's an uphill battle for us. But when I look at it from a cultural standpoint, we have built a lot of this. We're all guilty of it. If we don't want this, then we wouldn't be going to a bunch of movies, putting a bunch of money in the entertainment industry, rewarding their pocketbooks onto it, and that's steering what you're taking in as a consumer on a consumption side. So it's a multifaceted challenge point. You do not ever want to live in a police state. I'm just telling you that. And we're police officers and we are peace officers, okay? We are not a tyrannical force, and we don't ever want it to get to that point where that's where the relationship is perceived or exists within the community. And the way to address a lot of these problems that we're facing is not to have an over-reliance to the police department and law enforcement to be that solution set, but for us all to come together to work towards a positive end result to be where we need to be.
Once again, I have a question and a thought. Does the sheriff or the police department around here have a Scared Straight program? And the reason why I asked that question, that was a tool that they used for the school systems and the police from where I grew up at. A lot of people can recognize Willie Raines sitting back there and you see him. Now imagine going to Rawway State Prison and there's 12 of him in that room. Nobody made a repeat trip or wanted to get rode up by the principal, the teachers, or the police to make that trip back down to Rawway State Prison for a Scared Straight program. And that was the same age group that progresses and escalates to the other crimes you got. I went down there one time, never went down there again. And I wonder why, the intervention, programs like that work, and then you got people saying it might be too hard, but it alleviates and puts people back in track at home and in society.
So the Warner Robins Police Department does not run or operate a Scared Straight program. We are not a jail holding facility, and I can't answer for the programs of the Sheriff's Department out of respect for the Sheriff's Department. It would be ignorant on my side, and I would pass on misinformation or belief points. What I will say is we dealt with numerous parents that would take their children down to the Warner Robins Police Department and want us to do, basically, you could say a paraphrased version of Scared Straight. Problem point behind that is, what's the second message you sent to the child? Stay away from the police when I got a problem. So again, we steer away from that aspect. We'll go into an educational point with a child, but we don't ever want to create a situation where we're building in a fear perspective within the youth as it relates to us within the law enforcement community. Because then that self-perpetuates perceptions that in that child's mind as they grow up, as they become adults, a reality point to them that the police are a threatening, tyrannical, intimidating force and stay away from them. So it's a balanced blended point. The state, maybe through the juvenile justice system, would be something for them to say, hey, we'd open up our facilities for you to take the kids through and kind of see if you make bad decisions where you're going to end up at. But it has to be structured in a proper manner to where you're not having mixed messaging that works contrary to what your intended intentions were to be.
Good evening, good evening. I just thank God for all what you're doing. I just kind of want to bring some clarity to what you're seeing amongst our youth. I think I'm qualified to speak on it because for the last 26 years, I've been in every state, 27 different countries. And this is what I deal with. What you're dealing with is a cultural issue. It's just not happening in Warner Robins. It's happening all over. A rise in violence. The answer is not taking away the Second Amendment. Because like he said, they are getting these guns illegally. So what we gonna have to do, again, like they were saying, is it's gonna take all of us working together. Music is very powerful. Music shifts atmosphere. If you don't believe it, they've done a study on it. That's the reason why you ready to go into the holiday season, what you gonna hear at malls? They're gonna play music. The reason why, because studies have shown that people spend more money when they're happy. Walmart has adopted that. If you go to Walmart, they have speakers on the outside playing music because music shifts the atmosphere. Music has the ability, if you're having a bad day, your favorite song come on, you forget about all of your troubles and all your pain. Even if you don't know how to dance, you're going to start rocking to it. For a few moments, that music can take you into a happy place. So if music has that ability to shift atmosphere and take into a place of order and a place of utopia, when music used the wrong ways should shift atmosphere into chaos. And this is what you're seeing. Our young people are listening to Young Thug, all these rappers that are going back and forth out of jail are losing their lives. They're glorifying and glamorizing all of this stuff. This is what they're listening to. You look on the internet, all you see is guns flashing. Guns flashing. Guns flashing. And so now, if you're looking at all these entertainers, these young people, they're making millions of dollars. And yet and still, the image that they are showing, this is what our young people are looking at. And this is what they're gravitating towards. Social media, all of that. So here's the answer. What can we do? We as parents have to be responsible. As my dad would say, you can't listen to that. You're not in my house. That's how I am in my house. You can't listen to that. Now, I understand, and I tell them the reason why. Just like I told you about how music shifts atmosphere. Now, somebody can listen to it. Now, you might can listen to it and it won't bother you. But you listen to somebody else, your young people whose minds are precious, and that's what they glorify in the games and all that. That's what they're doing. We're dealing with a culture issue. It's not a black, not a white thing, because not only I do this, I do detention centers. In the detention centers, you have everybody there. I went to one of the biggest ones in Alabama, spoke last December. There was everybody there. It was even a little Indian boy. I'm like, what in the world did you do to get here? They're from the age of 12 to 17. In this detention center, you had to have 3 to 5 felonies. These kids are rapists, attempted murderers, you name it. There's another facility in Montgomery. It's the same facility, but it's different. They're from the age of 12 to 17. In this facility, they're there only to be housed to the age 17 or 18, and then they shipped out to a major prison. Every one of those kids are in there for 30 to life. And it's a lot of them. This is happening all over the country. So you're dealing with a culture issue. It starts when our young people are even in school. You know how they base how many prisons they're going to build? How many beds? From your 3rd grade test scores on reading. Our young people are not reading on their level. And so, not because they can't learn, it's because they're just not doing it. Because they are right here. Again, like he said, whose fault that is? Who pays the bill? They're not paying the bill. We got to take ownership for that. And we have to own it. And just like you're saying, we want to hold everybody accountable. Police, you see police brutality, we want to hold them accountable. But who holding the entertainers accountable when they place this music out? We call it art. You see what I'm saying? You see the hypocrisy? And this is what we're seeing right now all over the country. So what can we do? Again, parents, look where your child at. They're on the internet. They're social media. Now women, every woman in here, God has given you something. Y'all call it intuition. I call it spirit of nosiness. Now, you know if your man was talking to another woman, y'all know how to be private eyes and find out what your man doing. You know how to get his code to his phone. Now, if you can do that with your man, do that with your children. Put that same energy in your kids and find out where they at. That's where it's going to help that they don't have to see these guys and have to go in prison because they're building bigger and bigger prisons. We got a program that I'm going to be a part of. Lay It Down, going to be next Saturday from 10 to 4. Hey, about guns and stuff. Your kids, some people in your neighborhood got guns. Just put it out there. And ma'am, I am so sorry for your child had to experience that trauma. And I'm glad that you're getting him help. And I'm praying that will not affect. I pray that that will use, whatever he's been through, that God will use it for a greater purpose. And so that's what we're going to have to do. It's going to take everybody coming together, not just the police. It's all of us as community churches, community coming together to doing the right thing. And ma'am, I'm sorry to hear of that. What you're just saying, I get calls every week from that. What you're just saying, I get calls every week from it. Because not only I work with this agency, I work with a police agency all over the country. And it's a rise everywhere in small towns. Look at Fort Valley. Fort Valley have more than 400% in crime rate. They having a shooting and a murder almost every week. Little Fort Valley that I grew up in, it's everywhere. Until we come together as a community, put a demand on the entertainment industry. Long as we killing ourselves now, there's no problem. That's art. But you never see them kill a dog. Peter will shut them down. You never seen them talk rapping about killing a dog or anything else to eat. But long as they're killing each other, there's no issue. Long as we shoot down each other, let's be honest with you. I'm talking to the black community. Where's Al Sharpton? Where's Jesse Jackson? Where are them? Are they marching? No. Let's be honest with you, because we're killing each other. We got to get to the point and start loving ourselves and find out what is going on, and let's put a demand on it. And that's when we're going to see a bigger change in our communities. Police can't stop them from shooting. They're getting the guns. Only thing we can do now, yes, pray, but also put some plans in action. And let's do something. Thank you.
We have covered a great number of issues tonight. And there's still a whole bunch of issues that have yet to be covered. There's no doubt that there's responsibility collectively. And I think, if anything, we've come out of tonight is understanding the value, not just of our collective responsibility, but our collaboration. Now, you can learn on the front side, as I heard an old preacher say a long time ago, you got to straighten that plant up while it's young and tender. Because once it gets some bark on it, it's not going to bend. It'll only break. Or we can do it on the backside, which is the breaking. When we start talking about these things in our community, Chief, you mentioned it earlier. You talked about the Roaring 20s. Not these 20s, 100 years ago, the 20s, where people like John Dillinger and Bonnie and Clyde have become folklore and legend. If you notice when I start talking about them, Babyface Nelson, Dillinger, Bonnie and Clyde, all of these criminals, none of them are black. The issue is how we glamorize criminalization. If you go back to the Old West, how many people say Wyatt Earp, but the reality is they talk about Billy the Kid. Am I right? We have, as a society, often glamorized doing wrong. That's not a black, white, rich, or poor issue. That's actually beyond cultural. That's a soul issue. What will we walk away from here tonight convicted about doing? I thank you all for opening up and making yourself available to share and your insights, your perspective. I thank you all for coming and asking the questions that should be asked, raising the concerns that should be concerned. But don't walk away from here tonight saying us or them. We're all in this together. This is our community. This is our state. This is our country. This is our issue. And if we're going to resolve our issues, we always have to get together and talk. Because again, it's going back to that mental health paradigm we were talking about a little while ago. When the collective leaders decided that we would de-emphasize how we would treat mental health, it could put a burden in an area that they were not trained for. Now, on the flip side, now we want all of them to be mental health experts, and they can't. It's not possible. But then they can't be the parents either. And the parents can't be the law enforcement. But what must we do? Collaborate and not blame. Collaborate collectively so that we can learn from each other, so that we can make a better society. We can make a better community. Chief and your command staff, I applaud you and thank you. Any closing remarks you all want to make before we break out tonight?
Again, it's hard to come up behind that. We thank you for being here, part of this. We're going to continue to do these town hall meetings. It's a needed engagement point. We don't need to have the conversations when there's a calamitous event and then when people are shouting at each other, because once that happens, there's no communication. We're not listening. So again, thank you for being here. Warner Robins, our community, Houston County, the state of Georgia, will only be as good as what we put into it as a community to make it as good as it can be. And it can't be done from any one person, any one section. It's going to be us all together onto it. So again, thank you for joining in with us on the partnership for this town hall meeting. And again, thank you very much.
As we get ready to go, when you leave here tonight, if there's a question that you haven't gotten answered, walk up to this person and ask them. Don't leave an opportunity when you have an opportunity. And we have a wonderful opportunity when there is nothing to lose by trying, but everything to gain if we try. So let's take that time to take advantage of that. Let us pray. Father, we thank you tonight for this time. We thank you for the police department coming and sharing. We thank you for the community coming out and sharing their concerns. God, we have heard about the difficulties and the challenges that we see and are faced with in our community. We are understanding that we have so much to do, and it's no one else's responsibility but ours. God, we've heard about the issues that have happened for the young lady who's paralyzed, for the young man and the entire family that's traumatized. God, we ask that you touch right now in the name of Jesus, to not just heal physically, but to heal emotionally and spiritually. Everyone that's involved, even, God, we pray for the perpetrators. Because if we can get to you to get to them, maybe they'll change their hearts. Maybe we'll be able to do more for the collective good by working together. God, help us get better understanding. Help us grow stronger. Help us be wiser. Help us be more effective in doing good, not just in our community, but in our homes, so that when we walk out the door, and when we come back in the door, we can rejoice because this is the day that you've made. And so yesterday, it's gone. Tomorrow, we're not guaranteed, but today, we're going to rejoice. We're going to rejoice tonight because the chief and his command staff made themselves available. We're going to rejoice tonight because the community came out to express their concerns. We're going to rejoice tonight, God, because now we have an opportunity to meet someone we've never met before and talk about things we hadn't talked about publicly before. And now we walk away knowing that we can get some answers and that we can be stronger as a result of it. Watch over us now as we get ready to leave from this place, but never from your presence. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you. Thank you.